Champagne sprayed across the white linen tablecloth, crawling toward the envelope my husband had just slid in front of me like it was nothing. Like 7 years of my life were nothing. Like I was nothing. The glass shattered before I realized I was the one who dropped it. "Read it," Julian said quietly, but his voice carried anyway. He always knew how to fill a room. 150 people went silent. 150 of the most powerful doctors, researchers, hospital executives, investors, and media partners in Port Kessler froze mid-breath and stared directly at me. Not him.
Me.
Because humiliation is always more entertaining when it's public. I didn't pick up the envelope.
Not yet.
Instead, I looked at his hand, resting on her shoulder. Long fingers. Familiar veins. The same hand that used to squeeze mine under conference tables when we were broke and hopeful and building a future. Now resting on Tamsin Vale. 28. Corporate smooth. Expensive dress. Smile like polished glass. "I think honesty matters," Julian continued, turning slightly so the room could see them together. "Chelsea and I are separating. Tamsin Vale and I are together. And I wanted everyone to hear it from me first." The air shifted. Not from shock. From hunger to hear more. The crowd leaned into the drama like it was oxygen. Someone coughed. Someone whispered. Someone laughed under their breath. I picked up the envelope. Divorce papers.
Prepared. Signed.
Legal seal visible. My name printed beside his like we were still equals. My pulse slowed. That's when I knew I was going to be fine. Because panic feels like drowning. And I wasn't drowning. I was ice. "I'm sure you understand," Julian added softly, leaning closer, voice dripping with sympathy that used to melt me. "You've been buried in work and your own little misery. I have needs. I need someone who remembers I exist." Tamsin Vale had a wry smile on.
Light. Pretty.
Pull. And something inside my chest went still. I placed the envelope back on the table carefully, aligning it with the edge like precision mattered. Because it did. Precision was how you survived men like Julian Scott. I stood. Chairs scraped across marble as people shifted to watch. I could smell citrus from the champagne. Hear the soft hum of the harbor wind through the glass walls. Feel my pulse in my fingertips. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised even me. Julian's smile faltered. Just slightly. "I actually have an announcement of my own." Silence deepened. Someone's fork clinked against porcelain. Too loud. Julian's eyes flickered to mine. For the first time in years. He looked unsure. And if you think that moment felt good, you're wrong. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff knowing you're about to jump and you don't know if you'll fly or die. But I smiled anyway. And that's when everything changed. Because 3 months earlier, I still believed my husband loved me. 3 months earlier, I still believed loyalty meant something. 3 months earlier, I didn't know my entire life was already being auctioned off right under my nose. 3 months earlier, I was planning a surprise anniversary dinner where I was going to announce I was naming Julian as co-lead contributor on my cellular therapy breakthrough. Yeah, I was going to hand him half my legacy as a gift. Funny, right? Back then, our lives ran like clockwork. He left at 5:45 a.m. for trauma rounds. I left at 6:30 for the research wing. We texted between surgeries and lab runs. Ate dinner half asleep. Collapsed into bed next to each other like survivors of different wars. I thought that was normal. 2 ambitious people. Same dream. Same future. I thought we were building something together. I didn't know he was building something without me. It was a Tuesday. Raining. The kind of cold October rain that turns Port Kessler's harbor into gunmetal gray. I'd left my laptop at the research facility, came back around 9 p.m. to grab it. The building was supposed to be empty. Budget cuts meant security only covered the main floors after hours. But as I approached the underground transit tunnel that connects the research wing to the hospital, I heard voices. His voice. I stopped. My hand on the access card reader. Not breathing. "The listing change has to happen before the gala," Julian was saying. Urgent. Tense. Not the smooth public voice. "If Chelsea's name stays primary on the trial registration, we lose leverage." Tamsin's reply came cool and measured. "I've already contacted the trial coordination office. We'll submit an amended leadership hierarchy. You'll be listed as principal investigator. She is a secondary contributor." The floor tilted beneath my feet. "She'll fight it," Julian said. "She won't have time." Tamsin again. The gala is in 3 weeks. We announce the separation publicly. Paint the narrative first. Workaholic wife, neglected husband, natural drift. Meanwhile, the trial listing changes in the system. By the time she realizes, Helixera has already moved forward with you as lead contact. Silence. Then Julian's laugh.
Sharp.
Unfamiliar. She actually wanted to list me as a collaborator. Can you believe that? After all this time, she still thinks we're partners. My hand clenched around my bag strap. The leather creaked. Pathetic, Tamsin murmured. But useful. Loyalty makes people predictable. The separation papers need to be airtight, Julian continued. I want a clean financial break, no shared assets touching the research, and public first right to any media from the trial results. Already drafted. My contact at the firm specializes in high-asset divorces with IP complications. Papers shuffled. There's one more thing. The trial schedule. What about it? I've been feeding you inside information on the funding timeline, patient recruitment targets, and regulatory submission windows. If that comes out, it won't. Julian cut her off. Nobody's looking. Chelsea's too trusting, and the university ethics board is a joke. By the time anyone asks questions, I'll be the face of the biggest medical breakthrough in a decade. They moved away. Footsteps echoing down the corridor. I stood there in the dark, rain drumming against the windows above, and felt something inside me crystallize. Not break.
Crystallize.
Like cellular structure under pressure, forming something harder than what existed before. I walked to my car on autopilot, sat in the driver's seat, watched rain cascade down the windshield, distorting the parking lot lights into watercolor smears. Then I cried.
Hard.
The kind of crying that makes your ribs hurt and your vision blur. I cried for the girl who paid for his residency. For the woman who worked overnight shifts so he could focus. For every little project comment. Every forgotten anniversary. Every time I made myself smaller so he could shine brighter. But here's the thing about cellular biology. About the research Julian wanted to steal. Cells don't just break down under stress. Sometimes they adapt, evolve, become something stronger than the original structure. I stopped crying, wiped my face, started the car. He wanted spectacle?
Fine.
I'd give him the truth instead. I sat there for 43 minutes, not crying, just breaking silently. And then something worse happened. I stopped breaking. I started thinking. And if you've ever had someone betray you so deeply that grief turns into calculation, you know how terrifying that shift feels. Because grief means you still care. Calculation means you're done. I drove home, made dinner, asked about his surgeries, smiled when he kissed my forehead. And that night, staring at the ceiling while he slept beside me, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him or scream or cry in front of him. I was going to let him believe he was winning. And then I was going to take everything back. The next morning, I called Nadia Hillary. If you have ever been betrayed, share with me in the comment how you handled it. Also comment where you are watching from and tell me what you think happened at the end. I read and reply to every single comment. Like, share, and subscribe to support us and help others learn from stories like this. 7 years ago, Julian Scott was a surgical resident with brilliant hands and empty pockets. I was finishing my postdoc in cellular therapy, working 70-hour weeks in a university lab that smelled like antiseptic and ambition. We met at a research symposium. He made me laugh during a presentation on regenerative tissue protocols. Laughed until wine came out my nose, which should have been humiliating but somehow wasn't. Not with him. 3 months later, he proposed with a ring he couldn't afford. I said yes, without hesitation. I didn't know I was signing up to be invisible. The early years were beautiful in that exhausting way that builds real things. I'd come home at 2 a.m. from the lab, and he'd have left me notes on the bathroom mirror. Going to change the world, Dr. Scott. Start with you. His handwriting always slanted right, like he was leaning into the future. I worked overnight shifts, took on extra consulting. Anything to keep us afloat while he completed his surgical fellowship. He needed focus, needed time, needed support. I gave him all 3. By year 5, something shifted. His surgeries were being featured on medical networks. The surgeon who saves the unsavable, they called him. Profile pieces. Morning show appearances. That smile getting wider with every camera flash. My research? The work on cellular regeneration that could revolutionize trauma recovery? It stayed in journals nobody read. Papers buried under paywalls. Grant applications stamped pending. But I didn't mind. Not really. We were a team. His success was our success. Right? That's what I told myself when he forgot our 5th anniversary. When he stopped asking about my trials. When he started saying we about his work and you about mine. How's your little cell project going? He asked one morning, not looking up from his phone. Little. The word sat in my chest like a stone. But I smiled.
Poured his coffee.
Watched him leave for another surgery that would make headlines while my breakthroughs sat in a freezer, waiting for funding that never came. 3 months ago, everything changed. Helix-era Biologics approved my trial. Full funding. Multi-site collaboration. This was it. The moment that would prove cellular therapy could regenerate damaged neural tissue. Could give paralyzed patients their lives back. Our 7th anniversary was approaching. I had this idea, stupid and sentimental in retrospect. I'd list Julian as a research collaborator. Not because he'd contributed, but because I wanted him to feel part of it. Wanted us to share something again. I never got the chance. Back to my current reality, I waited for Nadia to answer the phone, patiently. Now, if you don't know that name, good. It means you've never needed someone who specializes in destroying powerful men quietly. Nadia was a litigation strategist I'd met at a university fundraiser 2 years earlier. Sharp eyes. Sharper mind. The kind of lawyer who smiled when you brought her a complicated case. I need full legal containment strategy, I told her. Start talking, she said.
So I did.
Everything. The tunnel conversation. The trial manipulation. The authorship positioning. Tamsin Vale's corporate access. The gala humiliation plan. Silence. Then Nadia said quietly, Chelsea, this isn't just divorce. This is coordinated professional fraud.
Good.
Because divorce would have been too easy. We agreed to meet at her office because some conversations are more fit when physically. She smiled when I walked into her office. Dr. Scott, she said, closing the door behind me. You look like someone who's done being nice. I need to understand my options, I told her, sitting across from her desk.
Clean.
Organized. A single coffee cup still steaming. My husband is planning to publicly humiliate me while stealing my research credentials. I have 3 weeks. Her smile widened. Tell me everything again. Think of details you may have missed before. I did. Every word I'd overheard. The trial timeline. The corporate connection. The separation ambush planned for the gala. Nadia took notes in precise shorthand, her pen moving across the legal pad like a conductor's baton. When I finished, she said, this is fraud.
Corporate espionage.
Possible federal research misconduct. She looked up. The question is, do you want justice or revenge? I want the truth on record, I said. Permanently. Good answer. She pulled out her phone. I'm bringing in Matteo Cardenas for intellectual property litigation specialist and Lila Okoye for forensic financial analyst who had exposed 2 research embezzlement rings. We're going to build a case so airtight that Julian's lawyers will beg him to settle before it sees daylight. Over the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. Morning coffee with my husband. Evening encrypted data transfers with my legal team. I smiled across dinner tables while Lila traced unauthorized consulting payments routed through shell vendor contracts linked to Helix-era. I kissed him goodbye before surgeries while Matteo timestamp locked every lab iteration, draft submission, and trial protocol revision into institutional registry archives. I listened to him complain about funding stress, while Nadia prepared pre-filed separation documentation with fraud annexes attached. The hardest part wasn't the investigation. It was pretending to love someone you now understood was capable of destroying you for status. In public, I was the same Chelsea. Came home to Julian. Made dinner. Smiled when he kissed my cheek before heading to another late surgery. In private, I was someone else entirely. Matteo pulled server logs showing every draft of my research proposals. Timestamps. Metadata. Every citation, every methodology note, every piece of original work that had my digital fingerprint embedded in the code. Your husband never touched these files, Mateo told me, laptop screen glowing in the conference room. Not once. Every access point traces back to your credentials, your devices, your IP addresses. Can that hold up? I asked. In court? Absolutely. In the court of public opinion.
He grinned.
It's going to destroy him. Lila was quieter, more methodical. She tracked financial records like a bloodhound following scent. Found something, she said on day 9, turning her monitor toward me. Shell Consulting Company. Registered 3 months ago. Single client. Julian Scott, MD, single income source. Payments from an LLC connected to Helixera's clinical operations division. My stomach dropped. He's being paid? $10,000 a month. Classified as strategic medical advisory services. Lila's expression was ice. Want to guess who authorized the payments? Tamsin Vale. Bingo. She clicked through more screens. But it gets worse. I traced the formation documents. The shell company was registered the same week Helixera approved your trial funding.
Wait.
What? They planned this from the beginning, I said slowly, the pieces clicking into place. Not just planned. Coordinated. Lila pulled up a timeline.
Look.
Helixera approves your funding here. 5 days later, Julian's consulting company registered. 2 weeks after that, the first payment hits. This wasn't opportunistic. This was strategic. My hands went cold. How deep does this go? I'm still digging, but there's something else. Tamsin's emails. Lila hesitated. We got them through discovery protocols Nadia filed. There are messages to someone higher up at Helixera. Someone named Jerry Devlin. The chief medical officer. I whispered. He's referenced in at least a dozen emails discussing your trial. Specifically discussing how to transition leadership and optimize public positioning once the trial shows results. This wasn't just Julian and Tamsin. This was institutional. That night, Julian came home with flowers. Roses.
Red.
The expensive kind from the boutique florist downtown. For you, he said, kissing my forehead. Just because. I put them in water, watched the petals unfold, thought about how beautiful things could be poisonous. You're quiet tonight, he observed over dinner. Just thinking about the gala, I said.
True in a way.
Big night. Huge night. He reached across the table, took my hand. His thumb traced circles on my palm. A gesture that used to mean safety. I'm really glad we'll be there together. I met his eyes. Smiled. Let him think he still controlled the narrative. Inside, I was counting down. The evidence kept mounting. Private messages between Julian and Tamsin.
Dozens of them.
Coordinating timing, discussing asset protection, planning the public announcement down to the minute. But then Lila found something that changed everything. Chelsea, she said over the phone on day 7, her voice tight. You need to see this. Now. I met her at Nadia's office within the hour. They had documents spread across the conference table like crime scene evidence. What is it? Patient data, Lila said. From your trial. It's been accessed by unauthorized users. My blood went ice cold. What? Someone with Helixera credentials has been pulling patient screening results, preliminary data, and protocol modifications. All information that should be confidential to the research team. Tamsin, I said.
Yes.
But also someone else. The access logs show 2 different user IDs. Lila pulled up the records. One is definitely Tamsin's corporate account. The other is masked, but the IP address traces back to the hospital's surgical wing.
Julian?
Julian had been accessing my patient data. This is a HIPAA violation, Mateo said grimly. Federal health privacy law. Each unauthorized access is a separate offense. Looking at the logs, there are at least 47 instances. 47 felonies, Nadia corrected. If we can prove intent, we can prove it, Lila said, pulling up another document. Because I found emails from Julian to Tamsin discussing specific patient cases. Patients he shouldn't have known about. Patients whose data he clearly accessed illegally to feed information to Helixera for, I don't know what, competitive advantage? Early publication rights. I sat down hard. This was bigger than theft. Bigger than betrayal. This was criminal. The question, Nadia said carefully, is how far you want to take this. We file complaints about the HIPAA violations, federal prosecutors get involved. This stops being a civil divorce and becomes a criminal investigation. He accessed my patient's private health information, I said, my voice shaking. Not with fear. With rage. Vulnerable people who trusted our research program. He violated that trust for what? Career advancement. Looks like it, Lila confirmed. File everything, I said. Every complaint. Every violation. I want federal involvement. Nadia nodded slowly. This changes the gala strategy. We're not just exposing fraud anymore. We're exposing crimes. On day 14, we filed anonymous complaints with 5 entities. 1. The University Compliance Board, flagging potential research misconduct and unauthorized trial leadership changes. 2. Federal biomedical funding auditors, noting irregularities in trial documentation and possible conflicts of interest. 3. Helixera's Internal Ethics Division, attaching documentation of undisclosed financial relationships between company liaisons and trial investigators. 4. The Department of Health and Human Services Office for Civil Rights, documenting HIPAA violations with access logs and proof of unauthorized data use. 5. The FBI's Healthcare Fraud Division, because the financial payments combined with data theft crossed into federal criminal territory. This is the insurance policy, Nadia explained. Even if something goes wrong at the gala, the investigations are already in motion. The truth has momentum now. But something else was happening too. Something I hadn't anticipated. I was falling apart. Not publicly. Never publicly. But alone in my car after meetings with lawyers. In the shower. In the middle of the night when Julian slept beside me and I stared at the ceiling, wondering who the hell I'd married. The man in my bed wasn't the man I'd married. Or maybe he was, and I just refused to see it. Both possibilities felt equally devastating. My sister Rowan flew in on day 18. She found me in my office at home, surrounded by case files, eyes red from crying I'd tried to hide. Chelsea, she said softly, using the childhood name nobody else was allowed. Talk to me. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're barely holding on. I looked at her. Older than me by 3 years. Steadier. Always steadier. Then I broke again. Ugly crying. Shaking. Snot. No dignity. He's going to try to erase me, I whispered. Rowan pulled back and looked me dead in the eyes. No, she said. He already tried. Now you're going to erase him. And I wish I could tell you I argued. I didn't. Because she was right. I have to do this, I whispered. If I don't fight back, he wins. He takes my work, my reputation, everything I built. Rowan knelt beside my chair. You're not destroying him, Chelsea. He already did that himself. You're just making sure everyone else sees it. What if I'm wrong? The question came out broken. What if I'm being vindictive? What if? Stop. She gripped my shoulders. He stole from you. He betrayed you. He planned to humiliate you in front of your entire professional community. You gathering evidence and protecting your work isn't vindictive. It's survival. I nodded. Couldn't speak. And after this? Rowan continued. After the gala? You're going to rebuild. Stronger. Better. Without him. I don't know if I can. You already are. But then 3 days before the gala, everything almost fell apart. I came home to find Julian in my home office, standing at my desk, my laptop open in front of him. What are you doing? I asked, keeping my voice level despite my heart hammering. He looked up, smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Just curious what you've been working on so late at night, he said casually. You've been distracted, distant. I wanted to make sure you're okay. He was fishing, trying to figure out if I knew. Work stress, I said, moving into the room, closing the laptop smoothly. Trial prep is intense.
Right.
The trial. He watched me carefully. I was thinking, after we announced the separation, maybe we should consider collaboration anyway. For the trial's success. The patients deserve our combined expertise. There it was. The setup. Making it sound magnanimous, when really, he was trying to secure his position before the gala announcement. That's generous, I said, my skin crawling. Let's talk about it after the event.
Sure.
He kissed my forehead. The touch felt like acid. I love you, you know, even with everything changing. I know, I lied. After he left the room, I checked my laptop's activity logs. He'd tried to access my files. Tried and failed because I'd changed all my passwords 2 weeks ago. He was getting suspicious. I called Nadia immediately. He's probing, I told her. He knows something's off. Can you hold out 3 more days? She asked. I have to. Then keep playing the role. Don't give him any reason to suspect. We're too close. Those final 3 days were the longest of my life. Julian was suddenly attentive, bringing me coffee in the morning, asking about my day, touching me more, my shoulder, my hand, my back. Every touch felt like a test. Was I still compliant? Still trusting? Still the woman he could manipulate? I played the part, smiled, responded, pretended. But at night, alone in the bathroom while he slept, I'd look at myself in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. Hollow eyes, sharp cheekbones from stress, weight loss, a tightness around my mouth that never fully released. Every morning, I cover my pain and tears with makeup. Just 3 more days, I'd whisper to my reflection. Hold on for 3 more days. The night before the gala, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could barely breathe. Nadia had called with one final update. Federal prosecutors are reviewing the HIPAA complaint, she'd said. They're taking it seriously. If this goes forward, Julian could face prison time.
Prison.
The word hung in the air between us. Is that what you want? She asked gently. I thought about it. Really thought. I want accountability, I said finally. I want the truth documented. Whatever consequences follow from that are his responsibility, not mine. Okay, Nadia said. Then tomorrow, we will tell the truth. All of it. I finalized the restraining injunction. Emergency court order preventing any changes to trial documentation or leadership without formal review. Signed by a federal judge. Ready to serve the moment Julian made his move. Mateo compiled the IP evidence into a presentation deck.
Clean.
Irrefutable. Devastating. Lila traced the money trail to offshore accounts. Documented everything, including a detail she'd uncovered that afternoon. Julian had taken out a life insurance policy on me 6 months ago. $2 million. With himself as sole beneficiary. It's probably nothing, Lila had said, but her voice said otherwise. People get life insurance, but the timing is notable, right when the trial funding came through. I didn't want to think about what that might mean.
Couldn't afford to.
And me? I picked out a dress for the gala. Midnight blue. Elegant. The kind of dress you wear when you're about to change your life. The night before the event, Julian was nervous. I could see it in the way he checked his phone constantly, the way he paced our bedroom while getting ready for bed. Big speech tomorrow, he said, attempting to be casual. For you? I asked from the bathroom, removing my makeup with careful strokes. For both of us. Industry recognition. Important people. He appeared in the doorway behind me. Our eyes met in the mirror. You okay? You've been distant. Just stressed about the trial. I lied smoothly. Lots of pressure. He put his hands on my shoulders. The touch felt like spiders. Hey, he said softly. No matter what happens professionally, we're solid. Right? I turned to face him. Looked up at this man I'd loved for 7 years. This stranger. Right? I agreed. He kissed me. I let him. That night, I barely slept. Ran through scenarios. Practiced my breathing. Nadia's voice in my head. Stay calm. Stay factual. Let the evidence speak. At 5 a.m., I gave up on sleep.
Made coffee.
Watched the sun rise over Port Kessler Harbor through our penthouse windows. This was it. The day I stopped being invisible. The International Medical Breakthrough Gala was exactly as advertised. Glittering. Prestigious. Every major researcher, surgeon, and pharmaceutical executive in the Northeast Corridor. I arrived with Julian. We walked through the entrance together, his hand on my lower back. Cameras flashed. People smiled. I need you to do something real quick. If you're watching this and you're feeling this story, hit like, drop your comments, share this with someone who loves intense stories, and subscribe. Now, let's keep going. Dr. Julian. Dr. Chelsea. This way. The MC called. We posed. We smiled. We played our parts. Inside, the ballroom was stunning. Crystal chandeliers. Round tables dressed in white. A stage at the front with the Helixera logo projected large. Our table was near the center. Prime positioning. Julian had insisted. Of course he had. Better sight lines for the audience.
Dinner was salmon.
Perfectly cooked. I couldn't taste it. My mouth was desert dry despite the water I kept sipping. Around us, conversation flowed. Grants. Publications. The latest surgical techniques. Someone asked about my trial. Oh, it's coming along beautifully, I said, my voice steady. Really groundbreaking work. Julian's hand found mine under the table.
Squeezed.
Warning or reassurance, I couldn't tell anymore. The speeches began at 8:30.
Department heads.
Research directors. Polite applause between presentations. Then at 8:53, Julian stood. Nobody had announced him. No introduction. He just pushed back his chair and rose, and the room's attention shifted like iron to a magnet. I apologize for the interruption, he began, that famous smile in place. But there's something I need to address. Something personal. The room went silent. You could hear ice settling in water glasses. Chelsea and I have been married for 7 years, he continued. She's an incredible woman. Brilliant researcher. Dedicated scientist. I felt my heart hammering. Nadia was 3 tables away. I could see her sitting forward, ready. But sometimes, Julian went on, personal and professional paths diverge. Sometimes honesty requires difficult conversations. He looked down at me. The cameras were already out. Phones recording. I'm announcing tonight that Chelsea and I have decided to separate. We believe in transparency, in truth, and in moving forward with integrity. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turning. Whispers starting. Julian slid the separation papers across the table toward me. The sound was louder than it should have been, amplified by silence. Tamsin Vale and I, he gestured to her beside him, have found something real. Something that honors both our personal and professional futures. More gasps. Confusion.
Shock.
This was the moment he expected me to break.
To cry. To flee.
Instead, I set down my champagne glass.
Stood.
Smoothed my midnight blue dress.
And smiled.
Thank you, Julian, I said, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. For your commitment to transparency. His expression flickered. Confusion crossing his features. Before this night ends, I continued, projecting clearly, I'd like to share something too. Something about the truth. About integrity. About what happens when ambition crosses into criminality. The room went electric. Phones rising. Attention laser-focused. Julian's smile vanished. Chelsea, this isn't. 3 weeks ago, I overheard a conversation in the research facility basement. Between my husband and Ms. Vale. I paused. They were discussing how to steal credit for my clinical trial. Murmurs. Shifting. Eyes wide. They planned to amend the trial registration. I continued, voice steady as a surgeon's hand. Listing Julian as principal investigator despite him never contributing a single hour to the research. Despite every piece of documentation, every protocol design, every patient screening process bearing my name and my name alone. That's absurd, Julian said, trying to laugh. It came out strangled. Chelsea's clearly upset. I have server logs. I cut him off. Time-stamped. Showing every file access, every draft, every piece of original work. Would you like to see them? Silence. I also have financial records, I continued, opening my folder. showing monthly payments from an LLC connected to Helixera Biologics to a consulting shell company registered to Julian Scott. $10,000 monthly. Authorized by Tamsin Vale. Payments that began the same week my trial received funding. Tamsin went pale. I saw it even from where I stood. These payments, I said, represent undisclosed financial conflicts of interest in a federally funded medical trial. That's a federal offense. You're twisting, Julian started. I have text messages, I interrupted. Between you and Ms. Vale. Discussing timing, asset protection, how to paint me as an obsessive workaholic while you repositioned yourself as the trial's public face. I pulled out another document, held it up. But here's where it gets interesting. I also have access logs showing unauthorized entry into confidential patient data. 47 separate instances where Julian accessed protected health information for patients in my trial. Patients he had no clinical relationship with. Patients whose privacy he violated to feed competitive intelligence to Helixera. The room erupted. Not in gasps this time. In chaos. That's HIPAA violation, someone shouted from the back. That's federal crime. Julian's face went white. I never. The logs are time-stamped, I said calmly. The emails referencing specific patient cases are documented. The Department of Health and Human Services Office for Civil Rights has already received the complaint. So has the FBI's Healthcare Fraud Division. Pandemonium. People standing. Phones everywhere. Julian's hand started shaking. Chelsea, what is this? That, I said quietly, is what happens when you underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose. And, across the ballroom, Tamsin Vale stood up, moving towards the exit, like she suddenly knew something had gone very, very wrong. And that's when the room started whispering. And that's when Julian realized he wasn't in control anymore. But I wasn't done. This is a federal restraining injunction, I said, pulling out the final document. Signed this morning. Preventing any changes to the trial documentation or leadership structure pending investigation, which is already underway, by the way. The University Compliance Board, federal biomedical auditors, Helixera's internal ethics division, and federal prosecutors have all received formal complaints with full documentation. I paused. Let it sink in. And one more thing, Julian. My voice dropped. Quieter now. More dangerous. I know about the life insurance policy. $2 million. Taken out 6 months ago, right when the trial funding came through. His eyes widened. Genuine fear now. I'm not suggesting anything, I continued. I'm just noting the timing. For the record. Because everything is on record now. The room was screaming. Cameras flashing. Security moving toward us. I turned to Julian. Looked him in the eyes. Saw the moment he realized he'd lost everything. You thought humiliating me publicly would make you untouchable, I said quietly, just for him. You mistook patience for weakness. That was expensive. I picked up the separation papers he'd slid across the table. Added my own document on top. My pre-filed legal separation. With misconduct evidence attached. My lawyers will contact yours, I said. Sign quickly. You don't want this in court. Then I turned and walked away. The crowd parted. Cameras following. Behind me, I heard Julian calling my name. Desperate.
Angry.
I didn't look back. The next 72 hours were a hurricane. By midnight, the gala footage was trending on medical Twitter. By morning, it had jumped to mainstream news. Surgeon accused of research theft and federal crimes in explosive gala confrontation. Medical power couple's divorce reveals healthcare fraud. FBI investigating alleged HIPAA violations by prominent trauma surgeon. Port Kessler General Hospital suspended Julian, pending investigation. Standard protocol, they claimed. But everyone knew what it meant. Helixera terminated Tamsin Vale within 48 hours. Her name scrubbed from company directories like she'd never existed. But here's what I didn't expect. Jerry Devlin, Helixera's chief medical officer, resigned. Voluntarily. Citing personal reasons. Except Lila found out why. He'd been directly involved in the payment structure. Had approved Julian's consulting fees. had known about the plan to shift trial leadership. Helixera's board forced him out to avoid a deeper scandal. Cut their losses fast. The federal inquiry opened officially on day 4. Biomedical research integrity. Financial conflicts of interest. HIPAA violations. Healthcare fraud. The kind of investigation that takes months but destroys careers in hours. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters.
Colleagues.
People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanting comment. I gave one statement through Nadia. I'm grateful the truth is now public record. My focus remains on the clinical trial and the patients who deserve this treatment. That's all.
Short. Clean.
Professional. Julian tried a different approach. His PR team released a statement claiming misunderstanding and communication breakdown. That I'd misinterpreted private conversations. That the financial arrangements were legitimate consulting fees. Nobody bought it. The evidence was too clean, too documented, too irrefutable. On day 7, his lawyers contacted Nadia requesting settlement negotiation. We met in a conference room with views of the harbor. Gray sky. Gray water. Appropriate. Julian's lead attorney was a man named Porter. Expensive suit. Tired eyes. My client is prepared to offer. Your client is prepared to accept, Nadia corrected. We're not negotiating. These are the terms. She slid a document across the table. Full dissolution of marriage. Julian relinquishes all claims to shared property. The penthouse goes to me. All financial accounts divided with audited documentation. Julian surrenders any right to my research, past or future. He never publicly discusses the trial or uses my work in his professional materials. He pays my legal fees. And most importantly, he signs a binding acknowledgement that the research was mine alone. Porter read it, looked at Julian. This is aggressive. It's generous, Nadia replied. The alternative is a court trial where every text message, every payment, every lie gets public documentation. Federal charges remain a possibility regardless, but civil court would add another layer of scrutiny your client probably wants to avoid. Julian sat silent, diminished. Not the man who'd stood in that ballroom 10 days ago. Fine, he said finally.
Broken. He signed.
Just like that, 7 years ended with ink on paper. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. That night, I stood in my penthouse, looking out at Port Kessler's lights reflecting off the harbor. Rowan appeared beside me. She'd stayed the whole time.
Solid.
Present. How are you? She asked. I won, I said. Why doesn't it feel like winning? Because you loved him once. That doesn't just evaporate because he turned out to be someone else. I nodded, throat tight. But Chelsea?
She put her arm around me.
You did the right thing. You protected your work, your integrity, your patience, yourself. That matters. Does it? Look at your phone. I did. Messages from colleagues, former students, young researchers I'd mentored. One message stood out. From a doctoral student I'd advised 3 years ago. Dr. Chelsea, what you did took more courage than I knew existed. You showed us we don't have to accept theft. We don't have to stay silent. We can fight back with truth. Thank you for showing us how. Maybe Rowan was right. Maybe this mattered more than I knew. If you've ever been made to feel small, invisible, like your work doesn't matter, I need you to hear this. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Build your evidence quietly. And when the moment comes, stand in your truth without apology. Because the people trying to diminish you, they're counting on your silence. Don't give it to them. 2 weeks after the settlement, I received an email from the International Medical Research Foundation. Subject: Emergency Rescheduling, Innovation Award Ceremony. My heart stopped. They were revoking the award. Had to be. Too much controversy. Too much publicity. I opened it with shaking hands. Dr. Chelsea, due to recent developments, we're advancing your Innovation Award presentation to our annual summit next month. The board unanimously agrees your work deserves recognition untainted by external circumstances. We hope you'll join us. I read it 3 times. Then I cried. Again.
But different this time.
Relief. Validation. Something that felt like hope. The Innovation Award ceremony was different from the gala.
Smaller.
More focused. The kind of event where people actually cared about the science, not just the spectacle. I stood backstage, smoothing my dress. Emerald green this time. The color of new growth. You ready? Nadia asked, appearing beside me. She'd come as my guest. Witness to the ending she'd helped build. I think so. You've got this. They called my name. I walked onto the stage. The applause was genuine.
Warm.
And standing in the front row, smiling up at me, was someone new. Professor Kyle Hale, medical ethics scholar. We'd met 6 weeks ago at a conference. Talked for hours about research integrity, about the responsibility of science to truth. He'd asked me to coffee. Then dinner. Then a walk along the harbor that turned into 3 hours of conversation. Nothing serious. Not yet. But something possible. I accepted the award. Heavy crystal. Engraved with my name. Just my name. This recognition, I began, means more than I can express. Not because of the award itself, but because of what it represents. I looked out at the audience. Researchers.
Scientists.
People who understood. For years, I made myself smaller, quieter. I believed that supporting others meant diminishing myself. That partnership required sacrifice of self.
Pause. Breathe.
I was wrong. Real partnership elevates everyone. Real collaboration acknowledges all contributors. And real integrity means standing in your truth even when it's terrifying. More applause. I waited for it to settle. My research on cellular regeneration has the potential to change lives. To give people back mobility, sensation, independence they thought they'd lost forever. That work happened because I refused to let it be stolen. Because I chose documentation over denial. Evidence over emotion. I held up the award. This belongs to every researcher who's been overlooked. Every scientist who's had their work minimized or stolen. Every person who's been told they're too much or not enough. My voice strengthened. Final message. You are enough. Your work matters. And you deserve to be seen. The standing ovation started in the front row. Kyle led it. Then it spread. The entire room rising. For me. For my work. For the truth that finally had light. Afterward, at the reception, people approached me. Not with pity or gossip, but with respect. That took courage. One senior researcher told me. You changed the conversation, another said. A young woman, maybe 25, pulled me aside. I'm in a lab where my PI keeps putting his name first on my papers, she whispered. I didn't know what to do. But after seeing you, I'm documenting everything now. I'm going to fight back. I squeezed her hand. Good. You deserve credit for your work. Thank you, she said, eyes bright. For showing us how. That's when it hit me. The hollow feeling from before?
Gone.
This was winning. Not the legal victory. Not the settlement. Not even the award.
This.
Changing the conversation. Giving other people permission to stand up. Kyle found me near the windows overlooking the city. Quite a speech, he said, offering me a glass of wine. Quite a year, I replied, accepting it. So, what's next? World domination through cellular therapy. I laughed. Actually laughed. Maybe. Or maybe just good science. Honest collaboration. Building something real. Sounds revolutionary, he said, smiling. Doesn't it? We stood there, watching Port Kessler's lights flicker on as darkness fell. The city is transforming. Always changing. Always becoming something new. Like me. 1 year later, the clinical trial results came back. Cellular regeneration in 73% of participants. Improved motor function. Restored sensation. Lives actually changed. Not theoretical anymore.
Real.
The publication went to Nature Medicine. My name. My team's names. No ghosts. No thieves. Julian's name appeared in headlines too, but different ones. Federal prosecutors had filed charges. Healthcare fraud. HIPAA violations. He took a plea deal. 3 years probation. Permanent license suspension. Community service. No prison. But no career either. Tamsin disappeared from the industry entirely. Last I heard, she was working in pharmaceutical sales. Different city. Different life. Jerry Devlin faced civil suits from Helix Sarah shareholders. The company settled. He settled. Everyone paid.
And me?
I'm leading a global multi-site trial now. Mentoring young researchers. Building a lab culture where everyone gets credit. Where collaboration means elevation, not exploitation. Kyle and I are something. We're careful.
Slow.
Building trust brick by brick. He understands that. Respects it. Last week, a medical student asked me about the gala. About the confrontation. Do you regret how you handled it? She wanted to know. Some people say you could have been more private. Less dramatic. I thought about it. Really thought. No, I said finally. He chose the battlefield. Chose public humiliation as his weapon. I just chose the truth is mine. And that worked. Truth always works, I told her. It just doesn't always work the way you expect. Sometimes I drive past the research facility. Past that underground tunnel where I heard the conversation that changed everything. I don't feel anger anymore. Don't feel betrayal. I feel grateful. Because that moment, as painful as it was, showed me who I actually am. Not the woman who makes herself small. Not the partner who sacrifices herself for someone else's shine. The woman who documents. Who prepares. Who stands in her truth without apology. The woman who wins by refusing to be invisible. Julian thought that night would end me. He was wrong. It introduced me. To myself. To my power. To the person I was always meant to be. And that's the real victory. The night he chose to lose was the night I chose to win. Not through destruction. Not through revenge. Through truth. And truth, as it turns out, is the most powerful weapon of all. Remember, your work matters. Your integrity matters. You matter. Don't let anyone make you invisible. Stand in your truth. Document everything. And when the moment comes to speak up, speak clearly, speak factually, and speak without apology. The world needs your voice.